So welcome. This is the introduction to AAQEP. It is the high-level picture of AAQEP. I'm happy for you to ask me any questions throughout. Drop them into the chat box. If I cannot get to them at that particular time, then I'll definitely be certain to address them later on. So we're talking about collaboration and innovation and quality assurance. I'm Linda McKee. I'm one of the co-founders, and I'm also the Chief Operations Officer at AAQEP. I have here about attendees, but I think that I've connected with almost all of you as attendees. So I'll be talking with you in a little bit again also. So welcome, everyone. Your questions, please enter your questions in the chat box or save them to the end. I do try to talk very fast so that we have time at the end, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. But if it's something where you just absolutely need that response, I do not mind if you stop me and just ask the question. Just call out my name a little bit, and I'll try to have that. Having said that, keep in mind that that would be on the recording then. So, and I will stop the webinar at the end so that we can stop the recording and you can ask your questions then. So the agenda for today, I'm going to very briefly go over the value of accreditation. I believe the majority of people who are with us today understand that. I'll talk about the AAQEP approach and what we've done since 2017 when we first got started with this. I'll look at the expectations framework. I'll briefly review those. They are 4 standards, and each one of them have 7 aspects. And then I'll talk a little about the AAQEP community, which is one of the things that really draw people to AAQEP. That community is extremely important to us, and how we are supporting you and how we are also giving you the connections to work with each other across the nation to support each other. And then I'll just give you some very brief ideas about how to get started. So here we go, the value of accreditation. So I think the majority of people who have been in the accreditation world for a period of time understand that it really strengthens your program to go through that review process. It helps so that we're sharing those practices. We're collaborating with our partners across the not just the nation with other higher ed and other even alternate certification programs, maybe even some community colleges, different groups. But it also helps a great deal with our collaboration with our partners in the entire K-20 spectrum. It gives you an opportunity for professional development and growth. It does bring a stronger stakeholder relationship through really looking at that data and making some analysis about that. And then it improves that program effectiveness, we're hoping, through the stakeholders being engaged with you. And then, of course, making credible quality claims. That would be via that third-party validation. The intent for AAQEP is always and continues to be effective educators serving students, schools, and our communities. So we started with accreditation as a professional conversation in 2017, and maybe even a little bit before that at the kitchen table on a napkin. But the professional conversation was really looking about both internal and external stakeholders and thinking about what would be the questions that we would be asking. So how is it defined? What are its dimensions? Really thinking about also then how does it identify? How do we identify quality assurance? How do we identify quality in our programs? How do we measure it? And how do we recognize that it exists? And then moving it forward into our continuous improvement process, how can it be increased or enhanced? And how can we generate and understand about innovations? And the way we look at it from AAQEP's perspective is that an innovation is something that is innovative to you. It might not be to me. I've seen a lot of different programs over the years, but it is innovative to what you are doing. And so then you would create the criteria for success and the ways of measuring it and determine whether that is something you want to implement. So AAQEP's approach is really thinking about that whole conversation. We have intentionally built this as a conversation with people, with your peers, and across the entire spectrum. We had working groups when we first started in 2017 that were professionals in the field. They were deans and assistant deans. They were faculty members. They were P-12 educators, and they were state education staff. And they all came from 14 different states. They went to 3 working groups, and the first working group, Expectations, designed the standards and evidence from 2018. So they're the ones that standards and our aspects, and then the evidence that would be suggestions of how they could be met and showing the quality. The second working group was for process. That was maximizing that collaboration, really thinking about, okay, well, what is the best way? And in fact, in Baltimore in 2018, we had a meeting of about 100 people from around the nation who talked about what does it mean to have an accreditation process? What does quality assurance review look like? And so we designed the AAQEP process based on that information that they gave us. And then, of course, consistency was the third working group because that is equity. We're talking about what works with the standards for one group must work with the standards for the other group. Across the board, equity for all different types of educator preparation programs. With your preparing educators, then you would be held to the same standards and aspects. This is our vision and mission. I think they're pretty straightforward. The vision is really looking at, the evidence-based improvement, P20 system. And one thing that we'd like to really push forward on is changing that public confidence so that it's a little bit stronger. Well, not a little bit, a lot stronger and a lot better than what it is at this moment. So working with everyone in the higher ed and P12 in order to really help to improve that public confidence. And of course, the mission is exactly what you would think, to serve all those students, schools, and communities, and to do so equitably. Right at the moment, we're at about 225 members in 37 states. I think I have to update my slide there just a little bit. You can see all the little dots around the nation. We're also in Thailand, Qatar, and the University of Virgin Islands, which of course is one of our territories. So we have a very diverse population. We could have initial programs, advanced doctoral programs. We have traditional models, alternative, online. We have institutions that are large, medium, and small, public, independent. We have some that are very regional. We have community colleges and land-grant institutions. So quite a diverse population, but all will be addressing the exact same standards and aspects. So 8 operational principles. They started as our design principles. We've kind of transitioned over the last 9 years so that they're now operational principles. The very first one is collaboration. This is building that community that people talk about. How do we work together? We have our cohorts that are monthly cohorts. Once you become a member, you will be a part of that monthly cohort or a monthly cohort and have an opportunity then to work and collaborate. It's almost like a professional learning community, collaborating with people around the nation. So innovation, I mentioned, it's extremely important to that continuous improvement cycle. The partnerships, we really do look at that and consider that vital, not only for you, but for us as AAQEP. The comprehensiveness, all providers, I showed that on the last slide. The context, this is one that I believe is extremely important for almost all of our providers because that diversity of populations means that we really want to take into consideration your context and your institutional mission. And so we make sure that those are recognized and respected. We ask that they're put right up front and addressed throughout the report when you write that for your accreditation decision. Consistency in calibrating all the reviews, calibrating the decisions, ensuring that those really do continue with the credibility of those decisions and of all of our documents and reports. Efficiency, we do a lot of our work. In fact, we're all virtual, and we have done our best to try and ensure that any funds that come from your membership dues and your site visits, that those funds go to support you. And I'll talk about that later on when we get to the point about, all of the supports that we do offer. And then the last one is sharing. What we have done is we have supported the writing of a couple of different books already, 3 books at this moment. We're working on books 4 and 5. We really want to make sure that we're getting the information out about what we're doing in educator preparation so that we can not just say that, that people are making decisions about what we're doing, but we're giving them the information about some of the things that we're doing. And so that's an opportunity for us to share across the board with our books, but also sharing in those cohorts that I mentioned a minute ago. Really looking at what are some of the things that we can do to support each other with different instruments. And these are the books I mentioned. The first one was Using Data for Continuous Improvement in Educator Preparation. That one was shared at our Quality Assurance Symposium. Locating quality in the dynamic educator preparation landscape. And then the last one just last year was beyond accreditation. That's really looking at designing and implementing those quality assurance systems. So those books are available at any time. You can get a 20% discount on our website. So I'm hoping that you will be able to make good use of those. They have a lot of great information in them for you. So I'm going to talk about our expectations framework now. This would be our standards. As I mentioned, 4 standards. Each standard has 7 aspects. And then I'll mention a little bit about what the evidence looks like when you're thinking about presenting that today. And right off the bat here, we have that 2025 guide to AAQEP accreditation. So you can download that PDF at any point. So you'll get a full copy of the slide deck. That will give you the link also if you don't capture it at this moment. So the 2025 standards, now we had 2018 standards, but our bylaws say that we change those every 7 years. And so we did an update of them. We sent them out to a large population of members and non-members, state people and providers, and also P12 educators. And we asked for some feedback about the standards and the aspects. And so what we have published in January of 2025, we published the new set of standards. And this would be the completer performance and the program practice. Now, this 4 square is the same 4 square that we had in our 2018, but some of the information within each one of the standards has changed just a little bit. Since you're going to be working on the 2025 standards, I think that we'll just go straight forward with those and not worry about any of those changes. But just so you know, we've been pretty consistent with that. So the completer performance would be standards 1 and 2. Those are common to people that if they've been in educator prep and accreditation for any period of time. And I'm going to break each one of these down in another slide for you just so you can see the details a little bit better. Program practice is looking at more along the line of your governance structure, the internal quality control practices that you have, and then also your program engagement with P20. That's across the entire board. So if you look across, looking at standard 1 and standard 3, those are what we call foundational expectations. These are very common, again, to educator preparation. The standard 1 is going to be a lot about what's happening in your program and that evidence for that. Standard 3, as I'd mentioned, is going to be a great deal about your governance structure. But standards 2 and 4 could have some things that are a little bit new. Something that's a little bit different. These are what we call contextual opportunities, and a chance for you to just maybe look at some changes or some differences that you might take into consideration. We feel pretty strongly that these might be things pushing you out of a comfort zone, but they are things where if you have not already implemented them, then you'll just give us an idea about how you're looking at them moving forward. So breaking this down, standard 1, these are the aspects for it. Now, these are truncated. So if you really want to have that full language, a lot more detail will be in our guide. But they break down, and their foundational knowledge is just walking through pieces that we're, familiar with in educator prep. The foundational knowledge and skills, the social emotional learning, the diverse and intersecting aspects of human identity, thinking about the language and literacy development, thinking about student exceptionalities, educational technology tools and systems, and then, of course, the social and emotional growth and development of our candidates and of how they would be working with their students. Standard 2 is moving outside of the program a little bit and saying, okay, this is what we taught them in the program, and now how are we know that this is happening a little bit more in the field? But it could be relationships with all of the families, guardians, caregivers. How are we working with them to understand how that, really does make a difference in what is happening in the schools and the school districts? The culturally responsive practice. Now, you'll see in 2B and 2C, we do have that phrase, diverse learners in diverse settings, and then in diverse contexts. We do not tell you what the word diverse means. You tell us what it is, so that you are the one then collecting the data based on your definition of diversity. It's different across the nation, and so we want to make sure that is part of your context. That's part of what it is that you are really going to be thinking about. How are you meeting that particular aspect, and what is the evidence that you're bringing forward for that? International and global perspectives. Then, of course, the assessment and using assessment to inform student learning, professional conduct, and then the supports for mental well-being, including the impact of trauma. And that really does mean that, how are you helping the candidates to understand what would be the steps that they would take in order to address that? Not taking them themselves necessarily, except for the fact that they are getting professionals who can assist with that and knowing where those professionals are. So thinking about it from that perspective. Standard 3 was the one that I mentioned. That's the quality program practices. So recruitment, admissions, formative support, what would be the processes that you have in place to ensure that that is happening? Right across the board, the evidence that you do have for those. Obviously, a coherent curricula. It says aligned to relevant standards, and that's different for everyone. That would be obviously your state standards. That has to be state standards, and it does, because you do have to be state approved in order to receive an accreditation decision. That would also, though, been perhaps if you are required to do INTAS standards, you may be required to do ISTE standards, or it may be that you have NACE or another specialized program association standards that you want to integrate. But the only ones that AAQEP requires would be AAQEP standards and your state standards. The others you could integrate as needed. So, and again, that's your context. Obviously, the effectiveness of your evidence-based practices, really looking at what it is that you're doing in those programs, your clinical experiences. That says documented effective partnerships. So what is your really thinking about what is your evidence for the effectiveness of those partnerships? The data quality, which is an effective assessment system. That's really not just the data quality, which is obviously validity, reliability, fairness, your trustworthiness, excuse me, but it is also thinking about the assessment system and the organization of the assessment system itself. The measures that you're using and why you're using those measures. Internal quality control system, ensuring that what you're doing for Johnny is the same that what you're doing for Susan. The capacity for quality and institutional commitment to the program. Standard 4 is program engagement. Now, this changed it just a little bit, where standard 3 was clinical experiences and thinking about, what we're usually working with our candidates or completers in the field. And how are they getting that support in order to learn how to be a successful educator? This is what is it that we're doing as educator preparation programs, and really helping what is happening in the field, and helping specifically the schools and districts with which you're working, and also your completers in the field. So talking about engaging the partners for high needs schools, how are you engaging the partners to be a part of your improvement process? How are you supporting the completers when they are in the field, and helping them with not only their current entry, but sustaining them in the field, keeping them in the field. Working with the partners to meet state and local workforce needs. Those are, again, identified specifically by your state, and working with them. Diversifying the educator workforce, same thing there. How are we helping to do for that diversity? And then using publicly available data to inform program improvement. Now, sometimes people do have state data that, the state is collecting and sharing with them. Other people may not. So how are you, ensuring that you're collecting the data that may be in the field? And this could be in quite a few different ways. And then meeting state or jurisdiction mandates. Some states have specific requirements that are outside of what we have within our 4 standards. And that may be where those would be addressed specifically. It could be that they're addressed also in an appendix. But it also is where you would maybe link your state approval letter or any information that you might have about your institutional process. So evidence set expectations. This is one people are always waiting for. So what does it look like? Well, obviously multiple measures. We usually say minimum of your triangulation. That's pretty common across the field. We also ask for multiple perspectives. So especially in standards 1 and 2, thinking about somewhere along the line, and within each of those standards, you have a measure that includes program faculty or P12 partners or program completers or the graduate's employers. So somewhere within that standard, all four of those need to be addressed. They do not all be addressed in every aspect, but somewhere within there. So that would be for standards 1 and 2 specifically. Direct performance measures, as we know, looking at those licensure certification exam results, any data that is gathered by the state, if it's available, and then, of course, disaggregating it within the report by license level, location, and mode. So the AAQEP community, I'm going to talk about that for just a few minutes now, and we're always improving together. So we really love it when you're giving us feedback. We ask for feedback on a pretty regular basis for quite a few different things. And so, if you can help us to improve, we appreciate that. Some very common aspects of accreditation systems. And if you've been in accreditation or have worked with this in any way whatsoever, these are going to be very familiar to you. The process is always a self-study. It's at the heart of it. It's part of the whole process. It's part of the quality assurance and part of improvement. That's that self-study report that you write. The peer review is provided either off and on-site reviews. It can be both. It could be either one. It could be, as I said, a mixture, but it's a peer review process. The decisions rely on professional judgment. So it would be a panel of peers with working with you to make that decision. And then, of course, the accreditation term is usually 7 years, but for us, we do have the initial accreditation term where it is 5 years. And that is where the decision is probably going to and could identify either quality issues, something that's really fantastic, or it could be something where there are some areas of concern that need to be addressed, and we have a process to help with that. And it could be even some shorter terms, just giving you some ideas about exactly when you would come back and take into consideration the next steps. But with AAQEP, we thought about a couple different ways to do this. This is something that we really want to say, how can we support you? We have the cohorts that I mentioned earlier. They are ongoing. They're peer collaboration. They meet monthly, except I think they take a break July and August, even though there are some times when on the calendar when you can meet with other people if you'd like to. But there's a consistent time that you would be meeting in your cohort. There are about 10 cohorts. They have somewhere between 10 to 12 institutions each. It is one where one of our staff people will help you, that will meet with you and via email or Zoom to talk about what is the best time and the best cohort for you. That cohort has a staff liaison. That is the person that will be always your connection. So if you have any questions over the next couple of years about, what is it that I need to do, you can either bring it to your cohort or you can bring it to your staff liaison. That would be a person consistently, your person who's holding your hand if you need that. So we also have what we call proposals. Now you can do a proposal. It's not a requirement, but what it does is it gives you an opportunity to submit your measures. Now, you're not looking at any data analysis or anything like that. You're just looking at the standards and the aspects and a projection of the measures you would like to use in order to show as evidence for that particular aspect. And it is a peer reviewed. It's free of charge once you're a member, and it is peer reviewed by 2 peers, completely virtual, and they will give you some feedback about that. And they'll also meet with you and talk about it, about why that they may have given specific feedback. So it's a great opportunity for you to learn a little bit more about your measures and whether they meet particular needs. They do go through an intense training to do that also. We do have 2 pathways. Our pathway, the one is a 5-year initial accreditation pathway. This is for a maximum of 5 years. We have one state that does have a little bit shorter time frame now. So you want to talk with me about your particular state, and it does go into the memorandum of agreement with them if it is a shorter time frame, or if they even accept it or do not accept it. But 5-year initial accreditation, that means it's good for one time only. It is to help you to scaffold on. If you're already with another accreditor, you also want to talk with me about some support systems that I can give you in order to do that transition. But the webinar is tomorrow, and I think it's 1 p.m. Eastern time. I hope I got that right because I'm on Central time, so I always mess that up. But please register, and I will be happy to answer some questions that are very specific about that also. The 7-year accreditation is a maximum of 7 years. It's one that is, it's pretty common to accreditation. It's recurring. Once you have that, either 5-year or 7-year, you'll move forward and continue with the 7-year. We do have an optional accreditation with program performance review that is like the SPA review, but we just need to know that you would like to do that because we do have to get the subject matter experts involved with that. So just so you know about the visits, now this is common for both the 5-year, which is the initial, and the 7-year. You will select what we call a local practitioner who will bring the context, the knowledge of your context, the understanding of your program. They are a member of the team, the review team. So they will they will go through all of the training to be a reviewer. They will sign a confidentiality agreement. And we do have a lot of guidance on our website that can help you to make that selection, but I'm happy to have that conversation also. But the local practitioner is someone you select and you send us the name so that we can help them go through the process. They are a member of the review team from the very beginning, reviewing the report, helping to do all of the interviews and document the final report that goes to the commissioners. We try to keep this as a very small team for the review, so that there's a very small footprint. It says on site, but if it is a 5-year, the initial is completely virtual. So that is something to keep in mind also that we'll talk about at another time. One thing that's a little bit different about AAQEP is that we really wanted this to be a professional conversation. If you remember that from the very beginning when I mentioned that on one of the slides. And so because it's a professional conversation, we ask that the teams give no judgment or recommendations while they're collecting the information. When they write their reports, they are as objective as possible, not using any subjective language, not making any comments or recommendations. They are just collecting and affirming the evidence. They may be collecting more evidence than what has been presented in your report, and they may be affirming the evidence that is presented in your report. And so then they will complete a report that, of course, comes to you for final review. No rejoinder, just a final review for basic information. And then that is a report that we try to keep as objective as possible. And this always leads to a very timely and transparent decision. It is a virtual decision meeting with the commissioners. You will be invited to attend. You will be able to answer questions that they may have. You will hear the entire conversation. They do not meet ahead of time to talk about it. You will hear the entire conversation. You will hear the decision that will be active right then. It usually is about 3 months after the site visit, so it's a pretty fast decision. We try to turn it around pretty rapidly. So, and everyone is welcome. Fast timeline. You can find this timeline also on our website. So I'm going to scroll through it pretty fast. When you join AAQEP, you have the option to submit a proposal. Then you'll turn in either the IAR or the QAR. Those are your self-studies for a completeness check. Now that's optional also. It has to come in 9 months before the site visit. But the completeness check, that checklist is on the website. So you can do it yourself. Give yourself those extra couple of months for the final turn-in of the IAR at 6 months prior to the site visit. Then there'll be multiple off-site visits and meetings. That will be where the team will be talking and reviewing and completing some documentation themselves, preparing for the site visit. Then you will meet with the team also during those virtual off-site meetings, okay, to answer some questions, maybe to explain some things that may be in the report that are, could be, maybe need a little more clarity. And then there is the site visit, and the team, again, with the 5-year is completely virtual. With the 7-year, it will be on site. And then there is the accreditation decision, 2 to 4 months after the site visit. Most of the time, it's 3 months. And then, of course, you turn in the accreditation report. Now, this says yearly after the accreditation decision, but it is really after the site visit, so that, I'll make an adjustment to that for you. We do have a platform. You will be able to upload all of your report on this. And this is just looking at, the heat map for it, just so that you know that it is a shared workspace for you. You can either, document it in there, writing it, right into the template there, or you can write it and then upload it into the template, just making it easier for you to keep track of everything. No one can see this until you give us the permission and publish it. So this is something for you to work with. And then once it is published, because you say it's complete and it's ready to be reviewed, then it is available for your team to review it. Now, having said all that, our member support and benefits are pretty substantial. This is one of the things that I'm always asking and talking with people about. So you pay membership dues, obviously they're annual membership dues for us. And then what do you get for that? So I've mentioned about the monthly cohort calls. We also have a full repository of recorded resources, things that come from our members that we've recorded of how to do certain things, like how do you follow people into the field? How do you get information from them when they're in the field? How do you, track your data quality? It could be, how do you build your assessment system? So we have those. Some of those are our member quarterlies, which follow those same things I've just mentioned. Sometimes we have open forums that really address a specific topic, and those are recorded also and available for you in that repository. But then we have a series of webinars that are there intentionally to help you. Once you become a member, you have access to these webinars as much as you want. The same as you have access to this particular webinar and the one from tomorrow, you have the recording. They're available on our website at all times. These webinars are available also. And this is to help you walk through the entire process. So if you're thinking about writing the accreditation proposal, it's about a 45 to 60-minute webinar to watch. It's recorded. You can watch it at any time. So you just get to know what you need to do for that proposal. That follows through the entire process. There's a different webinar for each one of them, going through the initial accreditation report, the quality assurance report, two separate sections for that, the site visit essentials. So when you're ready for that, you'll have not only a logistics call with our Director of Accreditation Services, but you'll also have this webinar that she creates in order to track that. And then we always have them live 2 or 3 times a year about writing the annual report. And then this webinar that is available for you to watch at any time, maybe when you're getting ready to write that report. These are always free to members. We're trying to do our best to give you the support so that you don't have to wait to respond for someone to respond to you, that you can go online and track that. We have additional resources. Now, these are discounted. They're available for non-members, but they're discounted for members. We have a lot of online workshops, in-person seminars, and we have a consulting that a couple of us do that can follow specifically what your needs are. We do have the AAQEP Institute that I'll talk about in just a moment and give you a little information on that, along with our annual meeting that is our Quality Assurance Symposium. So I'll talk about those in just a second also. The online workshops are offered 3 times a year. They take 2 afternoons. They're about 3 hours each. And one is making the case for quality. It talks about all those standards and aspects and the evidence for each one of them in much more detail. And then there's one ensuring data quality and equity, and that really is looking at what is it that you can do, giving you some ideas, some suggestions about how you can work with people to get that validity, the reliability, the fairness, and the trustworthiness of your instruments, and ensuring that. So those are available 2 or 3 times a year. And you can sign up for those looking on our website at aqep.org workshops. We do consultation or hold seminars. One of them is about framing an accreditation self-study. That's walking you through that process. One is about making the case for re-accreditation. So if you've already been accredited, how do we make those revisions? Getting started is another one about new leaders for quality assurance and accreditation. And that's taking it from the leadership perspective. So how do you really, work as a leader in order to help your entire team to, be a part of this process? Then we have quality assurance that is for everyone. This could be for non-members, for members, looking at designing assessment systems for continuous improvement, data visualization and storytelling, leading quality improvement, which is really for leadership again, and then mapping your quality assurance process. The majority of those are also offered at the Institute. So that would be one thing to take into consideration. The difference between that is at the Institute and with the seminars, you may have a group of people that would be from different providers. With the consultation, it's going to be just your team walking through the whole process. So a little bit of difference there for that and a little bit of difference in the cost structure. So the AAQEP Institute is every fall. This fall, it's going to be in Las Vegas, Nevada, and it has 3 seminar tracks: mapping your quality assurance process, designing assessment systems for continuous improvement, and making the case for reaccreditation. So it's open and ready for you to register at any time now. And then we have a data visualization and storytelling seminar. That one is quite frequently in our institute, but we were asked to hold it a little bit separately. So this is one that is going to be offered in Frederick, Maryland, in the middle of October. It is, again, available for you just as a seminar. So there'll be a group of people there from different institutions. And then we have our Quality Assurance Symposium, and the 2027 one is going to be in Orlando, Florida. The proposal is open right now. Well, it says through June 23rd, so you've got another day for that proposal to come in. But this is a peer-reviewed symposium. So we do have an events committee that will look at all the proposals and make some decisions. So it is about 45 to 50, maybe a little bit more. That would be different sessions that you would be attending. So it is a more of a conference structure, where the Institute is a 2-day workshop structure. All right, you can find all these and anything else that we have available. We're constantly changing and updating our professional learning events because we do have a survey that we send out and ask, what is it that you need? How do you need help? And let us know what we can do. And when you want to get started joining the conversation, you can become a reviewer. You do not need to be a member to be a reviewer, but it's a great way to learn about information or learn information about the whole process. And then also you as a reviewer could be a team lead or a team member. So it's a great opportunity for you to learn a little bit more. If you're interested in joining AAQEP, just contact me. I will walk through a cost transition timeline and table with you, giving you the information, giving you support documents, and also meeting with either your faculty or your administration in order to help them to understand and what it is, what we do with AAQEP, and answer any questions. It's a very brief online application. You pay the membership dues, and then you have access to everything, and we'll start you with a cohort. This is how our members describe AAQEP's culture and community. We hear these words all the time. These were pulled from a large series of surveys, and these are the words that are repeated consistently. So I'm hoping that you'll be able to join us. We're on LinkedIn. You can join me on LinkedIn. I'm also on LinkedIn separately from AAQEP, but you can contact me at any point. Thank you so much for joining me. And at this point, I'd like to stop the recording.